Okay, hello, and welcome to this eSchool News webinar, Navigating the Return to School. My name is Kevin Hogan. I am the editor-at-large for eSchool News, and I'm excited to have you join us for what should be a very informative session. Today's event is brought to you by Epson America. Epson's award-winning education solutions are designed to empower teachers to rise above digital distractions and deliver interactive, creative, and laser-focused learning environments with super flexible, low maintenance, and budget-conscious technology. Specifically designed with educators in mind, Epson laser displays deliver big, bright, immersive learning experiences to captivate, engage, and inspire every student in the room without compromising whiteboard space. Epson's high-definition document cameras offer affordability and exceptional feature sets with brilliant image quality and advanced zoom capabilities for added engagement. Epson's innovative presentation display and projector technologies make bright, collaborative learning environments a reality. Before I pass things off to our panelists, I'd like to take a minute to go over some of the features of the platform that we're using for this webinar. Today's event will be recorded, so you don't have to worry about missing a thing. Within a few days, you'll receive an email message that contains a link to the recorded webinar, along with a PDF of the slides. You can submit questions at any time during this presentation by clicking on the Q&A box. There will be a time at the end of the presentation for our speakers to address questions. Also, there's a chat function that you can use by clicking on chat. Feel free to use this to contact someone from the eSchool News team if you have a technical question, but please don't use that feature to ask questions of the speakers. Closed captioning is also available by clicking on the CC tab. So with these housekeeping items out of the way, let's get started with the presentation, and my pleasure to introduce Remi Del Mar. Remi has 10 years plus years experience in the realm of global product marketing across hardware, software, mobile, and the Internet of Things. Remi spearheads Epson's vision of merging virtual and physical environments through projection and augmented reality technology sectors and works to define new applications. She continues to educate end users on the endless capabilities of creating immersive experiences and promoting the ability to break perceptions of what is and into what can be. With that, Remi, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Kevin. It's been a very unique year for everyone. Needless to say, in particular for educators, school and technology administrators all have been tasked with providing quality education to students despite these steep challenges. As school districts across the country prepare for going back full time, many are wondering what classrooms will look like and how teaching will change this coming school year. I'm here with Tony Spence, Chief Information Officer for Muskego-Norway School District in Muskego, Wisconsin, a school district that took a leap of faith and had most students attending school in person all year. And also Victor Valdez, Chief Technology Officer for Pflugerville Independent School District in Pflugerville, Texas, a large 25,000 student district that offered both in-person and remote learning for students. They're going to share what worked for them, how they overcame those challenges, what they're planning to do for this coming year in order to help other districts navigate reopening this fall. Good morning, Tony and Victor. Good afternoon. Thanks for being here today. We look forward to hearing your experiences. We wanted to use our virtual platforms since the pandemic started in connecting people to share their learnings, and I look forward to hearing your feedback today. So to get us started, I have a question for both of you, and maybe we can start with you, Tony. Want to have a kind of a quick look through our rearview mirror to what happened last year and how some of that learning can apply to this coming year. Can you provide an overview of what your district did last year and what was your role in making it happen?
Absolutely. Well, thanks, Remi. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. So we were in person all year from the beginning of the school year, but we gave certain families the option to choose a virtual choice if they so chose to do that, plus the ability to move in and out of that throughout the school year based on parameters of metrics, things happening around the state, the county, the local, and of course in schools. So 88% of our families started the school year in person. with 12% attending virtual. And we stayed open for the entire school year in that format, with some small variations and those populations going back and forth between in-person and virtual.
Thank you, Tony. How about you, Victor?
Hi, Remi. Hello, everyone. Thanks
Hi.
for having me join today. So Pflugerville is an interesting district. We're in an interesting spot. We're in Central Texas, just north of Austin, Texas. Texas has its thoughts about how to bring back the economy and the state and so on and so forth. But the Austin area is pretty much the opposite of what the state thinks. So we've had this mix for the last year and a half. When we started the school year, there was a big push in the state from a number of districts, including Austin ISD, which is one of the largest in the state, to begin or even go full virtual. The state kind of met school districts to some degree out there, and they give us the first 4 weeks of virtual instruction. But after those first 4 weeks, we were required by the state to open our doors. We had no choice. So at that point, we gave students the option and parents the option of either coming into school or remaining virtual. The state did at least give us the opportunity to continue virtual learning, but we had to open our doors. Throughout the entire year, we hovered between 45 and 55% in-person learning. As the school year began to progress, we added we noticed more students coming in. So our job in IT was to make sure that we could help the instruction team and the campuses balance that load between students that are in school and students that are at home using any device and technology available to meet those instructional needs. So it was definitely challenging having both kinds of students in our district.
Thank you for that, Victor. Were there particular things that you put into place for mitigating health issues, communicating with parents and students, that you can provide some insight? I'm sure like when this kind of happened, there were a lot of struggle with certain parents and students and teachers to sort of get online, log on, internet infrastructure and all that stuff. Are there things that you put in place that is going to carry on as we start this new fiscal year or this new school year?
Mm-hmm. For us, from a Pflugerville perspective, we implemented the Let's Talk software. A lot of school districts in our area and around the state use it, and our public relations team was very familiar with it, but we just never acquired it. We didn't see that kind of need in our district, even though we're at 25,000 students. We quickly realized that we needed some tool to siphon all of the parental requests and complaints and issues and concerns into one location. And it allowed us to filter off requests from parents to technology, to curriculum, to health and safety, or even to our superintendent. And I think it worked so well that we're going to continue using that. It does conflict a little bit with our help desk. We were getting a lot of multiple locations. People were calling in, my student can't log in, and we're getting emails, my child forgot his password. And then we were getting Let's Talk requests saying, I can't log in from here either. So it was kind of a head spinner for us for a while, for the first maybe month and a half, but we've really got it narrowed down. But the Let's Talk feature is something that I know that we're going to continue using as a district.
What about you, Tony?
Yeah, well, first of all, Victor, that's great. That sounds pretty awesome. Kind of jealous. I have to look into something like that. But we were really strong in making sure that we had the right data at the right time to help inform our decisions. And while I think we're over the hump, if we can get there, not to jinx anything, we still have a ways to go in terms of making sure that we're tracking data in and around the local communities. So we have a COVID metric team, and it's just staying on top of that. So we pull in all the resources and all the data that we can, and we use a dashboarding system to really track every single detail. And it's pretty comprehensive. And that's not just to look good, it's because we use it every day. And I think we're going to continue to have our data at our fingertips so we can make sure that if anything's happening, we have everyone in the loop about what's going on, not just to inform our team, but our staff and community are expecting transparency and accountability. And they definitely look to us for that information, even though it's widely available publicly in many places. We have kind of that aggregate of all those different pieces of data that we can then present to our community and make sure that they realize we're staying on top of this to the best of our abilities too. And then also, really, we just want everyone to feel like they have a communication outlet. So our SEL opportunities for social emotional learning, are going to have to really take a higher priority than they ever have been. And certainly we push further down that path, as Victor kind of was alluding to. And for us, it's more a matter of just making sure that that's something that takes even a higher priority going forward into the school year.
It sounds like you both have clearly invested or in creating in technology, also creating infrastructure for communications. So what are your plans in terms of capitalizing on some of this technology as you start this new school year? There's some of the investment obviously is not going to go away. And Victor, as you mentioned, for example, the software system maybe started out for a different concept in mind, but now it's providing you certain kind of insight that you're like, I wonder what else I can do with this. So can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure, I can go first, Tony, if you want.
Yeah, please do. Go ahead, Victor.
Sure. Something I've repeated as I've spoken about this, on a number of times. I've told my school board, superintendent, told community members. We just recently had a state of the district address last week with our superintendent via Zoom webinar, since we do those via webinar now instead of in a large gym cafeteria or something along those lines. I've told everyone from the get-go, we spent about $6 million on devices for students and for teachers, and those aren't going away anytime soon. Just like the Let's Talk software showed to have a big benefit outside of COVID, I think our instructional team has finally realized that there is a true benefit to having technology in students' hands. And that has probably been the biggest, we use the term pivot, which I can't stand the term pivot anymore because we used it for everything in the last year. But our instructional processes, our instructional philosophies, all of that has really changed and turned a bit. And I'm proud to be able to have been a part of that, even though it took, unfortunately, a pandemic for us to turn that direction. So it's going to be here for a while. And I'm pretty sure I've heard the board even say, even when this is all done, these devices have outlived their life for 3, 4, 5 years. I'm pretty sure the board likes the idea of the one-to-one concept in our district.
Yeah, in a similar way, we didn't have to scramble to find the infrastructure when this went down. We just relied on it a lot more and thankful it was there. And that's not a pat on anyone's back. That's just to say that we were moving in the right direction for many years. And thankfully, with the support of our board, support of so many in the community and our staff and students, to say that, ask why the question, why are we doing this? But more so, let's continue down this path. And it proved itself, obviously, during a pandemic, but it really engaged even more people than we could have even asked for. It was kind of a coming out opportunity for technology to be such the major, I guess, hinge for everything that we were going to do. And as an example, we've got a very talented shop teacher in the auto shop who said, instead of watching videos that someone else is making, it'd be really great if I could make some of my own. So he has a GoPro, and that's an opportunity to stream videos and make them on his own, and then bring those students right into exactly what he's doing in real time. And so that made it just-in-time instruction, which was great for students who were far away, but also going into the fall when students are very close, of course, we expect all students to hopefully be in person, then those videos are just even more important because you can't get 25 kids huddled around some brake pads. It's just not going to be possible. So it encouraged and pushed others to seek out new opportunities and maybe find ways to do it without feeling like there was too much risk involved, thinking, well, I almost have to do this because of the opportunities it brings to my students. And we're very excited about what people are continuing to discover when they realize all these things were under their nose all along, and they're just ready to try them out in many new ways.
That's really good. It actually is also on trend with how kids engage with screens and learn and or search for information. YouTube teaches people a lot of different things, right? From playing the guitar to wood shop and fixing your car. So as you guys have deployed these devices, maybe in a different respective order, of course, with kids, their relationship with technology, it's a little bit easier. How did you deal with parents and the challenges they dealt with in terms of helping their kids kind of get online, get going? Did you provide any particular tools or courses to get them up to speed?
Victor, do you
Okay,
want to
Oh
take that?
yeah,
Victor,
sure.
sure.
Our instructional technology department is small. We have all of 6 people for 35 campuses and 3,000 teachers for support. And that's who goes out to classrooms to help teachers integrate and learn to use technology with their students. My hat's off to them. They spent every waking hour that they could building online training modules for Canvas, for parents to understand how to log into portals like Clever so their students could log into their applications at home. I honestly don't know how they did it, but they built an array, an army of things for parents and for teachers to log in and learn how to do these things. Because you're absolutely right. The parents are probably the ones that had the biggest jolt having their children at home for 8 hours a day while they're trying to work and make sure they're logged in doing their homework too. But I guarantee you it wasn't enough. It wasn't near enough with 6 to 7 people doing this kind of work. But we did. They spent a lot of time, and they still do. Even throughout the year, we're spending time on Zoom sessions with teachers doing trainings on how to get things done. And I know they logged in and had parents help out parents as well. So it was a big mountain to go over, but I know that they were able to provide tools for students, parents, and teachers as well.
It sounds like an excellent job that they've done.
They
And
did.
that's another pivot, right, Victor?
It is. I
That's
owe them a pizza a month. I said at least.
Yeah.
Isn't that a Friends reference? We keep saying
It
pivot.
is the pivot. I know.
Pivot, yeah.
Yeah. So in a very similar vein, we have a group of teachers who are deputized in a way to be tech mentors, and they're paid a very small stipend, not even worth it what they're getting paid. So it's out of the goodness of their heart, really. And they banded together to create, and under their own duress, these training opportunities for everyone else across the district, which was really great. And what we found though is that people actually prefer those formats now. It's almost like some of the in-person still happens, but that online virtual opportunity for training and just accessing it on demand is definitely, it's like 75% of our staff said that's their preferred method of getting PD now. So whether that's good or bad, that's going to be, I think, what we have going forward, at least for the short term. And then also, we don't have a ton of families who are in that underserved or unserved category for internet, but we still did have a handful of it. So we, we're a much smaller district in Pflugerville, but we have about 5,000 students, and we were distributing about 50 internet cards, MiFi cards, to cover those areas. And that includes even some of our staff, just because they're in areas where the internet wasn't strong or reliable. So we offered those too. And those tools are still being used this summer as summer school options exist. It has been a great resource for us. And hopefully now with kind of the ECF and other things coming from the FCC, that we might be able to help better fund those opportunities going forward.
Thank you both. I really have a lot of follow-up questions on this particular topic, because a lot of the content that you are individually creating, sort of the ABCs of tech training for parents and for teachers training, it will be interesting to see how they all converge, as clearly it's been needed, and you all have to go and develop them on your own separately. But I'll get back to that. Victor, I'm sure as a district of 25,000 students, you had particularly unique challenges. Can you tell me what they were as you were gearing up for this fall reopening?
Yeah, when we started, I mean, just like everyone else, when COVID really first started, we had to acquire equipment for starters. I mean, everybody had to go out and find what they could. You realize where delays were hitting you. So getting 23,000 devices at this point, because we got iPads for K1, 23,000 devices between May and December was an extreme challenge. It took us all of 7 to 8 months to get them all in. Distribution of those devices was also extremely challenging. Parents did not want to get out of their vehicle for obvious reasons. And staff members were struggling to get back to pick up even their own laptops. Our challenge for that much quantity, even as we reopened in the fall, was across many different areas. The first and foremost, as we came back and students were coming back, I said we were about 50% back from an in-person perspective, was support. I didn't gain any extra computer technicians, and we added 20,000 devices to our network. That has been beyond challenging, and our partnership with Dell has been great with the return of devices that are broken and so on and so forth. Collecting some type of, we hesitate to call it insurance, but fees from parents and students for damaged devices has been tough as well, especially when you're that broad. But I think our support for those devices has been probably the biggest concern. I see my technicians, bless their hearts. I mentioned how hard instructional technology worked when we were gearing up, but now it's on our computer techs to keep the maintenance of those. So thankfully, we have enough students that bring their own device, which has helped us offset. We have a supply of devices that we can swap out as we send other parts to Dell or replace things. So it helps keep instruction going. But that volume with no additional tech support has been the biggest hurdle for us this past year, no doubt.
Do you have any thoughts as to how you are going to tackle that? Of course, I think once doors open, that's going to also bring its own slew of traffic of questions and issues. And
that's a really good question. We have an idea. We just need money. So just like everything else, right?
Sure.
So yes, we saw this challenge with half of our district, our student population back, and now 95+% of our student population will come back this coming school year. And again, not having added any computer technicians because our student population did take a hit. So our funding has been reduced. But we have submitted ESSER fund, we call it ESSER funds in Texas. I'm not sure how they call it all around the country, to acquire additional technicians through those funds from the stimulus packages that we're going to receive from districts. And I'm adding computer technicians and instructional technology specialists. And our superintendent has been beyond accommodating, understanding that this is a massive challenge that we are facing. And obviously he doesn't want to impact instruction any more than we do. So it looks like we'll be getting some relief from that route.
Follow-up question, as you were thinking about basically getting technology into the hands of students and teachers, what were some of the top criteria on your mind in terms of what's the right technology solution?
Well, I've never been a Chromebook fan. I've never been big into Chromebooks. We've always had Windows devices. Our staff, our students, our teachers like being able to do more with them. So, we've always been able to tell people we can get these, but can't get as many of them because of the cost difference. I was pretty firm in explaining to our district, to our board and community, we did not have a choice this time. We needed to get as many devices in our hands of our students as possible. That's just unfortunately what COVID dictated to us, and that's the instructional need that we had to meet as a tech department. So that would make that decision pretty easy. We've just recently, I say recently, in the last 4 to 5 years, begun moving towards everything into the Google environment. But our staff members really liked Zoom. They really truly did. Our local service center has a partnership with Zoom. The service centers there are 20 service centers in the state of Texas that support school districts through contracts, bid, professional development training, whatever the case may be. And we pay $10 a license per year for Zoom. So 3,000 students, it was a $30,000 cost to us for the year, and our CFO, board, and our superintendent were like, do it, just get it and let's go. So the fact that we were able to provide devices to as many people as possible and being able to provide them the tool they preferred within our budget was probably very, very successful for us this year.
Tony, would you like to add anything to this in terms of sort of your challenges with, you spearheaded that a little bit ahead of time, but interested in hearing your thoughts.
It's great. No matter where we were, we always had to shift to be a little more agile for what happened with this. So we did not have a one-to-one assigned device set up for our elementary students. We had the ratio available, but we didn't have them assigned. And so we had to quickly go from devices sitting in carts to devices going home. And then again, when we were in person this year, we had to make sure those devices were regularly available, and they were used quite a bit more, just obviously for the purpose of digital content, and all students being ready. If any student were to go out for whatever reason, whether it be a quarantine or a positive, that they would have their device ready to go, it would be shipped out, it had their name on it, everything would go with them. We had to be very on point with how quickly we could respond to things. And so teachers were really responsive to it. They found themselves creating more content, putting it online. And even like some of our elementary classrooms were dual streaming too. So if students were home, they'd be able to just stay connected right to the classroom. And that was a great setup with webcams too. But I will say that even though we had a lot of infrastructure and a lot of resources, it was a lot of hustle. And this past summer was not crazy, but every minute was used to get prepared, because we never felt like we were prepared enough, because we had a hard time exactly anticipating how this was going to go. Things are going to go up, or were they going to go down? Were they going to stay the same? Were they going to get worse? So it was kind of that shift of kind of the unknown. And then I will say this, like, we felt good about having the opportunities to plan and knew exactly what we were going to do, because we surveyed the district. We are going to continue to survey them about their needs. So we have pulse surveys through Qualtrics, where we get to find information about what's happening in between these big surveys to learn how families are feeling about what's happening in the schools and happening in the community, and what direction they would like the district to go. And of course, we take that feedback as well as the vision and direction of the board to make our decision. And then that's our roadmap. So, but we did have to really practice high fidelity in everything that we did. And we really did have to come together as our departments and teams to make that happen, because as Victor can tell you, if it were all on his shoulders alone, it's just not humanly possible. We had to rely on so many different teams of people to really make that happen. And so again, I could see that being the same case for us, even in a non-pandemic year, just making sure we're getting everyone involved and everyone on the bus has their seat, if you will.
Yeah, clearly you guys have been able to mobilize a lot of different efforts leading to this point. Really interesting that you're doing a survey. I'm not sure if you've ever done it before, Tony, or not. What's typical lead time for you to take the survey results and actually, hey, Victor, I'm going to use your favorite word again, and pivot? Or is it within the school year, or is it going to be in consideration for the next school year?
Yeah, if we were to give a survey, it would be for this school year and it'd be for now. We would do that immediately. And our surveys do a couple of things. They get kind of the consensus, if you will, on behalf of community and staff, but they also provide us guidance in terms of what we need to do immediately. And so some of that comes to enrollment questions, some of that comes to resource questions. As an example, our master planning committee is entertaining the idea of that we have facilities that need attention. And so we've been working on a survey for months, and we had to put that on the side burner because of things related to the pandemic. And so we're bringing it out and dusting it off a little bit and saying, all right, are we going to present this again to our community? And so it was also finding out what the community feels that they could support if we were to do that. So not to go too far into the weeds with that, but community surveys are a regular thing for us, and they're probably sick of them to a certain extent. We're not trying to get to a fatiguing point, but to a point where we do feel like we're regularly keeping in touch with all parts of our community, and not just those that have students attending our school, even those that are just in community at large and paying taxes in this community, because we want their voices to be heard too. So.
Okay, so question for both of you. I'll start, Victor. What are your top 3 priorities for the fall?
3. So
Yeah.
3.
I'm doing a BuzzFeed thing here, you know, just gonna give you.
Yeah. I can give you a couple for sure. I can tell you right now that providing support for the instructional team as everyone comes back is number 1. As I mentioned earlier, we only had 50% of our students back. The other 50% were virtual. Now everyone will be back, and everyone will have a laptop in front of them. And so it's going to be different, but the same, if that makes sense. Everyone will be here. So this actually happened during our State of the District meeting or webinar last week. Parents were asking, are kids just going to sit in front of a computer all day now? Is that what they're going to do? Or how are my kids going to learn, you know, the way they typically learn? And that's a very challenging question for our district. That is, again, you know, we had carts and campuses that were shared between campuses. So 5,000 to 7,000 devices to 20,000 overnight. It's a massive shift for our instructional team, and that's going to be a big challenge. So finding the ways to make sure that they're supported, because I know, as Tony's mentioned, our infrastructure is great. And if anything, we expanded our infrastructure and wireless to the exterior parts of our building. So I just picture kids running with Chromebooks in PE outdoors kind of thing. You know, I don't know how this is going to look in our school district. The second big thing is, I think of a third one here, but the second big thing that we're going to focus on is cybersecurity. We have been on a large, very focused journey since 2017 in Pflugerville with external penetration testing and changing of things based on those recommendations. But this really introduced a massive gap in cybersecurity for schools. We had to quickly figure out, if I'm going to give every single teacher, or I'm going to hand out 3,000 laptops to teachers overnight, what does that look like from them connecting to our resources from home? So we had to figure out, what are the tools to protect those devices? Can we have always on VPN, and what does that help? How does that help them out? So those are the two, for me, those are the two biggest priorities right now. We're also, I guess as a mini third, we're opening 2 more campuses this year, trying to get them opened as COVID hit and impacted. And one of those schools is not going to make it, and the second one's going to be very close for next week. So we've got to find a way to get those campuses completed as well within the next 3 months, because our middle school won't open until maybe October, which is going to be tough. Yeah.
How about you, Tony?
Yeah, I think the big one is recalibrating. So we can respect and appreciate the past, but we do have to appreciate the innovation that's come with the things that have happened in the past year to year and a half, and yet at the same time not go overboard. One of the things that we really saw happen was people working well beyond regular hours and well beyond all of the different weekdays and working into the weekend. And so I think for us, it really became a challenge to make sure that we're not always running at 125% of normal, because that's not really fair to our staff, students, or even the community as an expectation. At the same time, I think we're really aiming for what will be year 4 of finalizing our classroom technologies, so that all classrooms across the entire district have within 95% of one another the exact same technologies. That means I can walk in any classroom as a substitute teacher, as a regular teacher, as a student, and get the exact same experience. We thought that was a huge factor for us. It played in big for us when we were during our COVID pandemic issue challenges, but our Brightlink projectors are that major hub from Epson, and then also all the technologies that connect to it. And so that played a huge role for us in terms of really holding on to it, and then trying to balance out again that it's okay to not have to respond at 8 o'clock at night to every email, because our technicians, and Victor talked about that a little bit, but our technicians went into overdrive, and they started doing things like going to homes to provide support for staff and students. And it was really great, but it's not sustainable in that model. So again, we have to recalibrate in a way to see what is best practice again going forward.
That's a good point. Actually, it's something that we are reminded of as well in the corporate space, because the boundaries between home and office became very, very blurry. It became basically, let me grab my burrito from the kitchen and get back to work until 8 p.m. So that's definitely needed.
Nobody believes me, but I've always said that this pandemic was effectively the end of snow days. So we'll see how that pans out.
Right.
I remember those. So there are going to be some distance learning and virtual offering options for both of you. Is that right?
Not really. The state of Texas is fairly adamant about getting kids back in school. School districts have pushed back. Things are going in the wrong direction across the country, as we know, especially here in Texas. But the state of Texas is holding pretty firm. Districts have pushed back and said, we still want to offer virtual for a select case number of students.
Sure.
But at this point, the state of Texas is still pretty firm in saying, well, then you will not get funding for those students. So we're battling those issues now at the state level. I know neighboring districts around me here in Central Texas are going to offer virtual learning for a select number of students, and basically foot the bill for that. So we'll see what comes about here in the next couple of weeks. We're almost back.
Yeah,
Tony?
similar for us actually. It's not necessarily a state mandate at this point in time, but or something tied to funding just yet. but our district is going to kind of resume as it was before the pandemic, which would be expecting all students to attend in person. Prior to the pandemic, we did have virtual school options. So this is not a new concept for us, and that still is available. But for the most part, those were our singular courses, not a whole program that they would then
Sure.
pull themselves out of school physically. So we expect 100% of our students to be attending in person, with the
Mhm.
exception of them being out for whatever reason they need to be. But on the norm, it'll be, again, in-person instruction each day.
Any thoughts on what distinguishes, in your opinion, a solid, effective distance learning from just in-person learning when teachers are actually in a classroom that can be carried over, basically? Just opinions are good.
Well, I've always told people, I've got a finance and technical background, so I always tell people my knowledge of instruction is always comes from my wife, and that's from 20 years of putting up bulletin boards and helping her set up, books and stuff in her classroom. I always tell people, yo no hablo instruction. I'm here to help you do your thing. But I will say that for the 20 plus years I have been doing this level of work to some degree or another, I've always, and I always tell my technical team this because we have the instructional technology team on our staff as well. You've got to listen to them because they're the ones in the classroom and we're here to support them. But I can tell you that I do believe there is a difference in using technology and having just as a substitute versus using it as a true tool. I mean, at some point, some form or fashion, thousands of years ago, the pen was a remarkable new tool in teaching and learning and work. And I think that technology devices, laptops, smartphones are the same thing. It's either going to, help you just kind of babysit you and do what's needed, or even in the classroom, make kids engaged and get them to produce things that are viable in their classrooms. That's kind of what I try to make sure we all understand, even though I don't understand it 100%.
Yeah, students have been sitting in classrooms in person majority of their lives, right? And they know that as just what is the norm for them. So when things switched over to be virtual for many students, particularly when the pandemic first happened, and even for those that were virtual in our schools going forward this past school year. So these were all new ways to learn. And
Yep.
were they effective? I mean, I think they were, but they were more challenging. And I think a lot of people once thought, oh, virtual classes and instruction, that must be a lot easier. And the answer is no, it actually might be more difficult because they're just not used to it in many ways. Maybe they're not as comfortable with it in terms of asking support from peers, because even though peer instruction is so key, kids remember what it's like not to know, and they're really good at helping others. But when there's not a classmate sitting next to you, and you don't have that, hey, can you confer with me real quick? I just have a quick question for you. And that doesn't exist. It takes a certain element out of that classroom. And so you can't recreate that exactly. You can have chat rooms and things like that in small areas, but it's just not the same. So you have to find ways to build it up in other areas. So while I think virtual instruction was very effective, I think it's more challenging, more difficult, and it's not for everybody, because we know there are different styles of learners. I'm a visual learner, so I like to see things. But if I'm going off auditory alone, I'm going to struggle. I'm going to have my challenges. And so I think, just like anything else, some people I think realized, hey, this is better for me. Or others were like, I don't want anything to do with that. So I think we have to keep the door open for it no matter what. But I do think it was certainly more challenging to get to the same outcome for student success.
It may have had a bigger impact on teachers and sort of their technical acumen and the resourcefulness and how they're going to continue teaching or change the way in which they teach even in in-person classrooms.
I can tell you,
So
we had a lot of folks struggle, even just this past year, as we all came back to work and such. I've had a lot of folks take the card for retirement. They said, I really enjoyed this, but this has really changed the way that, and it's not going to change back anytime soon. And that's just the direction a lot of our industry had to go this year, and it went. But you're right, our teachers I think are the ones that really got hit the hardest. There's no doubt.
It's also going to change as, you know, I represent a company that actually manufactures stuff for schools, right? And Tony, you mentioned BrightLink and how you find them useful in a socially distanced environment to be conducive with the display size for students and whatnot. I want to also touch on the issue of internet connectivity, because I think we often tell our engineering team that the kind of requirements we have on displays for schools are as rigorous, if not more, than they are for corporate in terms of internet security, connectivity, and all that stuff. So maybe Tony, this question is for you. How do you see BrightLinks being used in a collaborative way as you go back into the fall? Or even the way in which it may have changed now with regards to some of the technology incorporations and the new stuff that you've introduced for this coming school year?
Well, not to date myself, but when I was in school, we had a 25-inch tube television with a small VCR, and this is how you would get any content that wasn't shared directly from your instructor. You know, of course, pre-internet, to date me even further. And so that it's so interesting that that could be that far away in the corner of the classroom, and that was acceptable, especially at a low resolution feed available on video cassette tape. And now the expectation is, internet is on all the time. People can be out like without power, but if there's no internet, this is chaos. So there's almost no margin for error in schools with internet, to your point, Remi. And then also, as I talked about with our 4-year rollout, finally having the parallel access in all classrooms, so everything is analogous to one another, gave us again that hub, so that we knew that students sitting at the back of the classroom were getting just as much visual opportunity as if they're sitting right in front. And I was one of those kids in the back who would maybe tune out and be like not paying attention. But when you have a large bright display like that, that means it's right there for you. You don't have to struggle to get it. And that content's also being simultaneously shared through like Google or other avenues. And then if you're not getting it, it's probably being recorded so that you can watch it later. And because that's important, because when you're working on your homework and 5 different classes went by and you had practice for sports, you get home, you sit down to do your homework, and you're like, what did that person say about the quadratic equation again? I don't remember, or stoichiometry, any of those things, right? And so now you're thinking, oh, I've got that access to those things at my fingertip. So I can learn it well while I was in the classroom. I can learn it well when I'm outside of the classroom. And then again, if I'm in person, I can rely on my peers in the classroom, but I also now can communicate better with them outside of the classroom because I've been working on that too. And I think we find that our students are really being successful in being independent learners on their own. There's agency there where they are like taking ownership over what they do. And if you provide them with a low resolution, hard to read, hard to hear digital experience, they're going to tell you about it. They're going to say, that's not acceptable. Why are we doing this? It's not 1995, even though they probably weren't born then. But at the same time, it's like, this is something they come to expect. And I, for one, do not want to let them down. This is the future of our community and what we're doing. And I know it doesn't just rely on one projection system by itself, but that is such a key component and everything that's attached to it. Like I said, it's the hub of what we do. So it's kind of a celebration of things that we are able to say to our teachers, look, we're going to be this very important tool for you that you can depend on, rely on, so that we have high speed, redundant internet access, that we have APs in every classroom. So the wireless is there and it's strong so that students are equipped with high level devices, staff having the same thing. We have a 4-year rotation on every device in our district. Why do we do that? It's not because the devices fall apart after that. It was because we knew that after 4 years, they're saying it's not as fast as what I'm used to or as what I'm expecting. So the demand is there from staff, the demand is there from students, and our job is to make sure that they're getting the support and resources that they need.
It's providing a welcoming, conducive, supported by fact environment for teachers and students to feel comfortable when they come back to the classroom. So thank you for saying that.
You should have just responded to that yourself, Remi. You could have saved us a lot of time.
Yeah, no, it's always good to hear. How about you, Victor? You have any thoughts on that in terms of usage of display in classroom?
Yeah, you know, we took the leap 2013, I think. We had a hodgepodge of different projectors across the district. Some places even flat panel TVs were still there before the interactive ones came out. Went to a trade show. We've always had a good working relationship with our Epson representatives and such. And and said, "Hey, let's take a look at these interactive ones that are, hitting the street and see what's going to happen with these." And we opened 2 schools that year, and they were great. That's when you still had to use a pen before the finger touch capability came out. We opened up a few schools. We hadn't yet done most of our campuses, but we were opening, schools, 1 or 2 schools a year. I think it was 2015, 2016 when we had enough funded in a bond. It was probably 2017 that we decided to wipe out all of our high school classrooms with all Epson interactive projectors. And that's really where we had the hodgepodge between all of our different high school classrooms. And the fact that the teachers could show a projection screen with the lights on was like life changing to them. They didn't have to close the blinds and shut the door and turn off all the lights, and the kids could see kind of what was going on. So that has really changed the classroom in our district as well. I mean, it was a jolt. Talk about giving every teacher a laptop and teaching virtually through a pandemic. That was a jolt for our high school teachers too. We took down the projection screens and threw them all away, to the point where I actually had one high school math teacher go and get it from the trash can and bring it back because he didn't believe that's how it would work. So from a social distancing perspective and such, that right there told us as kids come back, they could spread their classrooms out and they'll be able to see 90, 100 foot, inch, whatever size on the wall or on a marker board from any angle in the classroom is huge for our teachers as they come back. I don't see how. We're opening 2 schools now, and I fought tooth and nail because our consultants and so on and so forth, and all these architects and new folks in curriculum, we need TVs, flat panel TVs. And I'm like, I have 2,000 interactive projectors with screens that are larger than your TVs. Just keep going with what we've got. Let us support one thing. And it's going to come out. It's come out great for our classrooms. I know that's just like Tony said, it's been great.
Well, thank you. So of course, as someone who represents Epson, I'm interested in learning as we move forward and start this new school year, how some of the new technology that you're incorporating is going to influence what you desire or your wish list from display manufacturers, Epson, and work with you closely to make sure that we're working on a roadmap that's conducive to how you're paving the path for education. Which brings me to another question. What are some of the top trends that you foresee beyond 2021? So this is a kind of a weird year also. I think it's a year where we should expect more pivots. But if there are particular trends that you're anticipating to see, be it technology, providing tools for self-paced training for teachers and whatnot, can you just kind of name 2 or 3 of them top of mind?
Tony,
could be hypothesis.
Sure. Yeah, I can jump into there. So one of the things that I guess as we're understanding it is that demand isn't going to go away for the versatility that comes through the virtual online environments, right? And so we do have to continue to stay on top of what all students, every single one of them, are seeing as opportunities to learn, because we don't want to turn our backs on the fact that, all right, now that we can be in person, that we automatically just go back to those ways of instruction. So it's continue to grow the intellectual capacities of all of our teams, including our students, on what technologies are there and how to best use them. And I think this has kind of stirred this and invigorated this desire to really be more involved in that. And so we really need to take advantage of what that is. And I know that's not a new concept, but we have way higher percentages of people being involved and wanting to do this before and more aware. Mm-hmm. And we've tried everything, right? So short of a pandemic, it's like we've tried everything. Mm-hmm. And now the interests are there. And so we really have to capitalize on that. And so while we may want to say, hey, to our tech mentors, now's a good time to rest. You guys really worked hard last year. Might have to like double down on that and say, this year could be just as involved in all these great opportunities to really grow the collective staff in terms of their knowledge base, but then also meet them with the technologies that they need. We like to pilot new technologies and we like to see what they do in our system. And we usually just involve our tech mentors because they're the ones that are great at experimenting and understand if it doesn't work, no risk, no loss. but we may have to involve larger groups of people, because I think the interest is there to start growing some of these more piloted technologies in those directions. So unfortunately, it's not that we have this huge list of what they are, but I think that's what we go to discover. And actually we can go to the conferences now, hopefully, and attend these things and learn more about it. I know they've always been there virtually, but continue working with vendors and hearing about the new technologies as they come, and then be ready as a system to experiment with them and use them, and then provide feedback how they work in our system.
Thank you.
I think you're really going to continue to see the trend of virtual meetings and larger virtual meeting groups, whether it be staff or students. I literally an hour before we came on board, my instructional technology director said, "Are we renewing Zoom? I'm getting Zoom requests for our art facilitators, for our special ed folks, for these teachers and these instructional coaches." I really think even in the realm of instructional coaching, how they'll be able to take their laptop, record themselves, as Tony mentioned earlier, and just go back and watch things and watch lessons, not just from a student perspective, but also from a professional development teacher perspective too. I really see that continuing and getting much stronger now that we've all gotten a taste of what it's like to develop and put things out there for us to continue to learn from. I see that happening a lot.
Thank you both. So I see that we're kind of reaching almost the end of our webinar, and we need to have time for Q&A. So one last thing before I pass it on back to Kevin is that any final words? I really appreciate your time, and it's always a pleasure seeing you and talking to you, and look forward to future series with you too. But if you have any final words for your colleagues, please feel free to add. And then with that, I'll pass it on to Kevin.
Victor, do you want to go, or would you like me?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think I'll just, if anything, this pandemic and virtual learning and the massive pivoting and shifting we did, if anything, it taught us all that we can innovate. We can innovate, we can be creative. Don't be afraid to throw something out. I couldn't have dreamt years ago for me having a phone call with my superintendent like I did last May. As you know, first of all, I joked that at the spring break meeting, as everything was happening, and told them, "We'll see you all in a few months. We're not coming back for a while." They all laughed at me and said, "Oh, well, whatever, that's your thing." And lo and behold, it was a year later before we all got back or something like that. I didn't think I could have ever have told him and said, "I have $6 million left in computer replacement cycle, network upgrades, this and that. We need to completely shift and go one-to-one overnight." I couldn't imagine having told him that at the end of April, early May of 2020, and then him being okay with it and just completely changing the direction we were going with that funding. So innovate, don't be afraid to bring things up. Just get out there and do it. It'll work out just fine.
Well, congratulations and bravo. Yeah,
that's great.
Good.
I appreciate Victor's enthusiasm, because it's obvious that's what's necessary to make it through such a crazy year. And again, I know we're not completely out of the woods, but I will say that, every time we've expected that this is as far as we can go and this is as hard as we can work, when you run a marathon, a 5K seems pretty good, right? So what we're thinking is, what we learn about running the marathon is now we can really get great at running the 5K. I might not be a great marathoner, but 5K sounds wonderful. And so I think for us, it's about keeping our focus on what our best practices are, and then really elevating those things. Because I think for a lot of times it was like, these are the gaps that we have, these are the processes we don't have. And so now it's about really focusing back again on our strengths and growing that as a system.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Victor. Kevin?
Thank you, Remi.
Well, Remi, thank you. What a great conversation that was, with a lot of really hardcore insights that I think our audience will be able to take and run with. If anyone out in the audience has any questions, we do have a few more minutes left here to answer them, but send them in anyway, because even if we run out of time, we'll be sure to have someone respond to them via email afterwards. I have a few. Tony, maybe we should have a different webinar about what life was like before the internet. I think we'll save that one for
hey, I'm right there with you.
if there was that life. But let's talk a little bit about the administrative side of things. We were really focused very heavily on the instruction, obviously, because that's the priority, of course, is getting the kids connected and having them learning, whether they're remote or they're in person or whatever flavor that is. But did you notice any changes when it came to, I don't know, boring stuff like forms processing, or the thing that the the papers that you would used to put in Johnny's backpack that would need to be signed and returned and go back, all those things disappeared as well, right? Talk a little bit about your experiences when it comes to that, the back office end of administrating a district. Victor, I'll start with you.
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, the one idea, I know we're running short on time, but the one idea that really comes to mind is just the use of a tool like Zoom or Google Meets, Google Hangouts, whatever it's called these days. When the pandemic first started, we were, March timeframe. We were having emergency phone conference calls. My boss asked me to set up a phone conference line for the superintendent's cabinet to have daily or sometimes twice a day meetings on the phone. And I finally said, I really think we need to start doing virtual chatting. And he was like, no, we don't need it. It's too complicated. I think he was worried about figuring out how to hit the buttons more than anything else, but everyone caught on really quickly. And, he never takes his laptop out of his desk. He's always, walking around with we call it the Mary Poppins binder, because he's got, what's the budget like? Here it is. What's this like? Here it is. We're like, where does this stuff keep coming from? But, he had to literally take it out, open it up, use the webcam. So there was that leap of, getting past over that hurdle of fear that people had to get through it. So administratively, things are much smoother now. It's finally a dream for us. We're using DocuSign. We're using all those things to, even for board documents and such. So it's come a long way in a quick 12 months. It's been nuts.
Yeah, Tony, same experience or?
Yeah, very similar. And actually, it's funny because we had a hard time shifting back to in-person meetings, even though our offices are very near one another. And so just that shift of like, oh yeah, and sometimes we felt like we're just more efficient when we do it in the online version, which again, you would have convinced no one of that prior to. And now sometimes it's just, hey, I think it's just a little easier. Let's just jump in virtually and then we'll wrap this thing up. Whereas before it was you kind of gather and congregate into a space and then you wait your time and some people go and get some coffee and some water and it's just very inefficient. So maybe I'll just go to the efficiencies of things have been a huge increase for us and in a very positive manner. Of course, it was never terrible, but the fact that doesn't at a moment's notice, people can just quickly get into a meeting. People can be remote, they can be in a far off place. And if they're available, we jump into a meeting and off we go. So, and again, even though we're slowly getting back into the mindset of meeting in person, I think our mind is still set on the virtual as the default at this point.
Yeah, and many of the conversations I've had that the social emotional aspect of this comes into play too, right? So you have a school board meeting where maybe there's some high emotions, but in this Brady Bunch setup here, it kind of diffuses some of those things. And the same with parent-teacher conferences. And I know for me as a parent, as a back-to-school night, it could forever be on Zoom from now on. I don't need to sit at my kid's desk, right?
Yeah.
So, and as other questions come in, I knew that the most difficult part of my job here today would be to end the conversation. We could go on. There's so many different aspects of this transformation that's going on, and that both you gentlemen are on the cutting edge on. But we will have to wrap things up. I'd like to thank our presenters once again, and Remi for a very informative presentation. And I'd like to thank all of the audience members for joining us as well. As a reminder, you'll get an email within the next few days that contains a link to this recording along with the slides. Thanks again for participating and have a great day.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Good seeing everyone.
Bye.
Thank you all so much.
Bye-bye.